So, here's the thing. They built the economy like nothing bad was ever going to happen. That's really what this comes down to. Keep everything moving, keep costs low, trust the routes, the ships, the suppliers, the timing, and just hope nothing serious breaks. Well, something serious is breaking. And that's why the Strait of Hormuz actually matters. Not because you need to become a shipping expert overnight. Nobody's asking you to start wearing a captain's hat and pointing at maps. It matters because that little stretch of water is connected to your gas, your groceries, your plane tickets, your repairs, your shipping costs, and yeah, maybe even your next oil change. That's the part people miss. Oil is not just gas. Gas is the loud part. It's got a giant sign on the side of the road yelling the price at you. Very dramatic, very effective at ruining your mood. But oil is also buried inside all the boring stuff that keeps the economy moving. Motor oil, lubricants, base oils, greases, coatings, packaging, industrial inputs, all the dull little pieces that keep trucks, farms, factories, engines, machines, and supply chains from grinding themselves into expensive confetti. And when the boring stuff gets scarce, everything gets expensive. So here's the real story. The economy wasn't cheap because it was strong. It was cheap because it was fragile. And now we're finding out what that fragility actually costs. Quick favor before we go deeper. If you like straight, plain English breakdowns that don't treat you like you fell out of a tree yesterday, hit subscribe. I'm trying to grow this channel without turning it into polished little press release theater. All right, back to the problem. For decades, companies were told to run everything lean. Keep less inventory, skip the backup systems, trust that everything would arrive exactly on time. That was the just-in-time economy. And when the world was calm, it looked brilliant. Investors loved it. Margins looked better. Everybody clapped for efficiency, like efficiency was the same thing as strength. But it wasn't. It was only strong while nothing serious broke. Now oil routes are under pressure, shipping routes are under pressure. Wars are adding risk. Countries are stockpiling, and companies are suddenly remembering that just hope nothing goes wrong is not a serious operating plan. Very modern, very efficient, very why is everything on fire? That brings us to Hormuz. The EIA says about 20 million barrels of oil per day moved through the Strait of Hormuz in 2024. That was about 20% of global petroleum liquids consumption. So when people talk about that area like it's just over there, no, it is not just over there. That oil helps power the diesel truck that delivers your groceries. It affects the fuel that moves goods across oceans. It touches fertilizer, shipping costs, airline costs, factory costs, and eventually store prices. When that strait gets squeezed, your budget gets squeezed too. Not instantly, not always in a clean straight line, but through the chain. And the chain is the whole point. Because once you understand that chain, you stop thinking about oil as just gasoline. Gas is the obvious part. You see the pump price, you feel it immediately, and somehow it always knows when your bank account is already tired. Very intuitive of it. But the deeper problem is when the oil shock escapes the gas pump. That's what the lubricant story is really about. Now look, there were reports that Mobil and Shell had told Walmart and Costco they had no packaged motor oil to send, and that bare shelves could show up soon. Mobil called that rumor false, and Shell said the reports were inaccurate. So I'm not treating that specific claim as confirmed. Let's be responsible here. But the broader motor oil story is no longer just internet noise. Industry groups, dealer bulletin reporting, auto parts coverage, and mainstream outlets have all pointed in the same direction. The lubricant supply chain is under stress. ILMA warned about disruptions in Group 3 base oils. Those are the ones used in the lubricants that keep engines, trucks, farm equipment, factory machines, defense equipment, and industrial systems running. The Drive reported that Toyota dealers were warned certain motor oil weights, especially 0W8 and 0W16, could become harder to source. Then Nissan's case made the warning harder to ignore. The Drive reported Nissan confirmed a real bulletin existed, even though the company said it had not actually been sent to dealers. That bulletin said bulk and packaged genuine Nissan oil could be limited to 55% of prior year volumes if implemented. CarScoops also reported an alleged leaked AutoZone memo estimating a 40% drop in available lubricant supply. AutoZone did not confirm that memo, so again, I'm not treating it as official. So no, this isn't just somebody online said motor oil might run short. This is the warning moving from industry paperwork into places people actually feel it. Dealerships, repair shops, auto parts stores, and eventually your bill. That matters because if lubricants get tight, your oil change gets more annoying. That's the small version. The bigger version is that vehicles get harder to service, factories get more expensive to run, farm equipment gets more expensive to maintain, and trucks get more expensive to keep on the road. That's not a minor inconvenience. That's the machine layer of the economy starting to feel the shock. The shock escaped the gas pump. Once it gets into parts, packaging, lubricants, and machinery, prices don't just move, systems start slowing down. And this is where the China part matters, but not in the fake political way people argue about online until everyone needs a nap. After the United States restrained certain semiconductor sales to China, China learned the obvious lesson. If chips can be cut off, what else can be cut off? Food, energy, raw materials, industrial parts, fertilizer, payment access. All the stuff a modern economy needs just to keep breathing. So China started building buffers, oil stockpiles, fertilizer, electricity, backup capacity, more ways to keep moving if the system turns hostile. Very polite of them to wait for us to learn the lesson first. Meanwhile, a lot of the American economy stayed obsessed with efficiency and minimum slack. Which sounds great until the shock arrives and all the missing slack shows up at once. We saw it during the pandemic. Masks, chips, shipping containers, ports, basic goods, inflation, the whole thing piled up like a group project where nobody did the reading. But how shocked can we really be? You strip the slack out of the system for decades, then act confused when the system has no slack. That's not bad luck, that's design. Now we're watching another version of the same story, except this time it's energy, shipping, food, machinery, military risk, and global trade all running into each other at once. So when people ask why prices don't just snap back after one headline improves, this is part of the answer. The world is not just dealing with one bad week in oil. It's learning that the cheap version of the economy had no cushion. So now everybody's trying to buy the cushion back. Backup suppliers, stockpiles, safer routes, higher insurance, all the boring protection they didn't want to pay for when things were calm. And yeah, that costs money. And companies usually try to pass those costs on. They're not sitting in boardrooms saying, you know what, let's eat all of this ourselves and protect the customer. Adorable idea, wrong species. Sheep was only cheap because nobody paid for the backup plan. Now the backup plan is coming due. And this is not just a supply chain issue. It's a standard of living issue. If everything costs more to move, store, insure, protect, replace, and repair, ordinary life gets more expensive. People don't experience that as global risk repricing. They experience it as, why does the same life cost more every month? So when someone says, don't worry, oil is down today, they're missing the bigger story. This is about the cost of running an economy when nobody trusts the old routes anymore. When every company wants a plan B, every country wants stockpiles, and the cheapest route is no longer the safest route, that cost doesn't stay hidden. It shows up in all the weird price increases that never quite seem to come back down. That's the real story. Not just Iran, not just oil, not just one shipping lane. The global economy is being forced to rebuild the backup plan it spent decades avoiding, and nobody should expect that to be cheap. The old economy was cheap because it was fragile. Now reality is sending the invoice. And if you want to understand how these shocks hit your cost of living, your mortgage options, your credit, your savings, and your ability to build anything stable, well, that's what this channel's for. Because the headline tells you what happened, but the money story tells you what it's going to cost.